Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite, the power rankings. Guys, this week was intense. There's a lot of teams on winning streaks, a lot of teams on losing streak. I think the AL Central had like a combined 18-game losing streak at one point. A lot going on. The playoff picture is all but certain at this point. I think from about here on up, it's going to be pretty much a cluster, and you can probably have a lot of it any different way, but this is how I see it. I talk about this all the time, but the bottom's like out of the playoffs, middling teams trying to fight their way to the playoffs, and of course, top 12 are kind of the teams I see being in the playoffs based on how they're playing, power rankings, and how they match up in their divisions. But guys, before we jump into it, I'm just going to ask that you do one thing for me as a favor. Go down there, smash that like button, and if, guys, I get 25 likes in the first 24 hours on this video, I'll do a bonus video this week. So a little bit of incentive for you guys. Hopefully you guys like it. But no further ado, we're going to start things off with the same team as always. The Oakland A's, 0-3 against the Cubs, 1-2 against Texas. Just a rough week for A's, and I guess we got word that they're leaving Oakland. Looks like Las Vegas picked up a plot of land where they're planning to build a ballpark. Assuming the A's are going to be moving there, playing baseball in the future. This team is gutted as it is, so might as well move them while they're low, I guess. Number 29, I think their new number 29, Kansas City, 0-3 against Texas, 1-2 against the Angels. Another team that's pretty much done already at this point in the season. We thought, at least I thought, we were going to see a lot of their younger guys make a little bit of progress, but I guess they just don't match up against the better teams that have the MLB talent yet. Might be a couple of years, might be the kind of team we saw with the Pittsburgh Pirates the past 2 years. It's going to take them a couple of years, but they're in a division, much like the Pirates were, that has room for growth. Number 28, Washington Nationals, 0-2 against Boston. Did win the series over the weekend over Minnesota. So a little bit of progress, but again, another one of those teams, we're not going to see them in the playoffs. Their division is pretty much a lot of the top teams in this division. No shot at the playoffs. They're in a rebuild situation. It's just going to be a long season for them. Number 27, they're picking up a couple of wins, but they went 2-1 against Cleveland early in the week. Pretty good series win. But then Baltimore rolled in here and took all 3 games. 2 of them very close, 2-1 games. Detroit's had a lot of fight, and I got to be happy with what you've seen from this team so far. Of course, you're not exactly where you wanted to be at this point. And I think we all know they're not making the playoffs, but really, of all the teams we've talked about so far, they probably have the highest outside chance of leapfrogging all these teams, arguably more than these next 2 teams. But I think if they match up, there might be a little bit of edge. For number 26, Colorado, 0-3 against Pittsburgh, 1-3 against Philly. So against Pennsylvania teams, won for 6 weeks. So Colorado, they've fallen pretty hard, pretty quick. So many runs in Coors this week in terms of all the games they've been playing. A lot of runs being scored. They just don't seem to have any pitching ace that can step up for this team, carry them for a solid win at any time. You don't know when you're going to get some good pitching from them. So every night, kind of worry about a blow up. Number 25, a little bit better than Colorado, I would say. 1-2 against Miami. 1-2 against the Mets. They are playing the Mets tonight. I think that game's about to kick off for Game 4. So they've lost, I think, every series so far this year. Maybe 1-1. Haven't followed them that closely, but as the outside viewer, it does seem like they're going to be right there in the bottom of the division with the Rockies. Do edge them a little bit better, I think, overall depth-wise. A little bit of a rotation. They do have a little bit of a strength. But the other 3 teams in this, they seem quite a bit farther back of. And when I suspect 2 of the teams in this are locks, or at least fighting hard for the playoffs, that 3rd spot being a wild card coming from this division, very unlikely. Number 24, we got Cincinnati Reds, 1-2 against Tampa. Getting completely swept by their division rival, the Pirates. So that was a big hit for them and really cemented them here in this spot. They had been making some progress. I had considered them being a little bit higher weeks past, but I think this is the highest they've made it. And arguably, you could probably interchange them with any of these teams. Same kind of story. I'm just going to keep repeating it for the teams. And this is probably the last team that I can kind of talk about this for. 1-2 against Philly, 0-3 against Houston. The I guess the fall of the White Sox over the past year and a half since playoffs in Houston, it's been pretty remarkable to watch. I think going into last year, everyone had picked them to win the division, and they've fallen to very weak, quite possibly on track to within a year or two be lower than these two teams who should be building. They still seem to be falling. So of all the teams on this list to be concerned of, White Sox are right there with it. I don't see them in this East, in this American League. There's a lot of teams that are doing better than them, and that I can't see them competing head to head. So I really find it hard to believe that they're going to be in the playoff hunt. Number 22, Miami, 2-1 against San Fran, 2-1 against Cleveland. I think they have a winning week going 4-2, and I dropped them in the power rankings. I think taking a step back, looking at their more in-depth numbers, their team as a whole on paper, sure, they're a little bit above 500. They might be ahead in record of some of the teams we're going to get to. But I think when it comes down to playing against those teams, I don't know if they're going to win more times than not. Sure, teams I just talked about them beating this week, they beat. But these are 3-game series. And I try to look at it as like a best of 7. If these teams matched up, would they win? And I don't know if the Marlins match up much better than the teams we're going to talk about. On top of that, they have 3 teams in their division that are ahead of them, all playoff teams last year, all on pace, in my opinion, to be playoff teams this year. So a playoff berth is almost out of the question. They're pretty much cemented, in my opinion, 4th in this division. So kind of locks them into this spot. Number 21, going 2-1 against St. Louis to start the week, and 1-3 over the weekend against the Padres. We have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Took a little bit of flack last week from someone about having them too low. I did agree with that player. That they have a good record. Sure, they're in first in the division now. I think they're tied for first after the game today with San Diego. But in my opinion, you saw it in that St. Louis series in that last game. They just don't have the depth to get these sweeps out. They got Gallen, they got Merrill, they got a couple pitchers that can really close it, but the depth on the pitching end isn't there. I don't know if the offensive depth is there. And in this division, it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, before they fall out of the playoff race. They might be able to keep up 500. We might see them track up if they keep this up long enough. But I think they kind of can peak just a little bit of a reach outside of the playoffs. And we won't really see them come June, come July in a playoff spot. But hey, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before on a team that I constantly kind of held low for a little bit too long, maybe a year or two. I do this for 4 years. I'm going to have teams that I'm not 100% on and accurate right away. They could be it, but I tend to think that's where they're going to end up. Number 20, we got Boston. So this is an interesting situation. They went 2-1 against Minnesota, 2-1 against Milwaukee, another 4-2 week. But this team hasn't necessarily gone up against American League East opponents. They're going to be going up against Baltimore in this coming series. They're going to have to continue to win to get my confidence behind them, because this division is stacked and they're in last, in my opinion, by the end of the season. So it's hard to say you're going to be last in division and put you much higher. I don't know if they have the consistency. That the offense has been there and it's been surprising, and the pitching has kept them in these games. So hey, again, another team that could very easily be getting around these two teams. We're kind of starting to talk about from 21 and we'll probably even close to 11. A lot of people that will have differing opinions, and you can interchange a lot of it. It's really close between these teams, I think. Number 19, we got St. Louis 1-2 against Arizona, 1-2 against Seattle. Sure, again, you could argue dropping them below Arizona, they lost. In my opinion, St. Louis has a better shot at the playoffs, a little bit higher up. Best of 7, they'll be super close, but that chance to be in the playoffs really does edge out. But I have had them free falling. I think they were top row, and after the first week of the season, they've just been falling because they can't put together a solid, consistent team. And until you can do that, you're no shot at the playoffs and the way this MLB has been playing this season. Number 18, it's currently won 7 in a row, 3-0 against Colorado, 4-0 against Cincinnati. I didn't move them up really much. I was concerned, talked about it last week, that they lost O'Neill, and they took my concerns and put 7-0 on them. But guys, this team is flying high, and I think this might, no, I had them 17th once, but any further than that, this will be the highest the Pirates have ever been in the existence of these power rankings. And I think this is the basement for them now. This team is starting to come together. The talent is starting to come to fruition after all of these years of bad. Reminds me a lot of the Astros when they were terrible for like a decade and finally put together all that talent because it just enough draft picks. They just add up, they add up, they add up. This Pirate team is in a division that is open, but they got to keep consistent until this is early. I'm not going to jump too much on board and get crazy right now. Number 17, Seattle. 0-3, Milwaukee. 2-1 against St. Louis. Kind of just going along right now, 500. Haven't given you much to consider them. They're going to run away with this division, have a shot at that. Just kind of status quo for this team right now. And I think that's fine. Just taking it easy a little bit early, but don't want to get too much into a lull. You got to beat up on the teams below you. They did that. They kind of knocked St. Louis down a lot. But when it comes to these division games, it's going to mean a lot because we're going to see it. The division's pretty tight, and it just goes to show because number 16 is their division rival, the Angels. 1-2 against the Yankees, 2-1 against KC. So they both kind of do the same thing, go 3-3 on a season. Ohtani has just been chef's kiss, right? But will they be able to carry the load again for multiple stretches? I get concerned that some of these teams might not be able to put together long streaks, especially when they're playing in their division. They're playing a tough American League East. It's going to be tough for this team to really get 600, 650 baseball. So they're right there in the middle. They're right there in the playoff hunt. I don't know if they have to get it over the edge just yet. Number 15, we got the Guardians, Cleveland. 1-2 against Detroit. It's 1-2 against Miami. A pretty bad week for Cleveland, and a lot of concern whether they really have the gas to get back to the playoffs this year. The offense has nothing to write home about, and the pitching's been consistent, always keeping them in ball games, but the 500, 550 baseball might not be enough to win this division this year, and I believe it's only possible to get in the playoffs if you win this division. And right now, I don't know if they have the power to match up against the top team in the division, the Minnesota Twins. Number 14, moving up a few spots, 5-0 this week. 2-0 against Washington, 3-0 against Detroit. I said it last week. They're going to have to come into this week and show me that they're serious. They got to finish April pretty much like 680, 700 baseballs because I knew how easy their schedule was. If Baltimore's going to be serious about being in the playoffs, and right here, they're on the border. They're probably the first team out for my predictions right now. They have to take the wins that are given to them. And they definitely did that this week, beating up on these two teams. But now going into Boston next week, continue that ball rolling because you have Boston, Detroit next week. Again, if you can put up 5 wins next week, you got to get this cushion against the weaker teams because when you play the top teams and you're going to be playing a lot of them, being in the American League East, you're going to go 500, 600, you might go 500, and then you can still get into the playoffs going 500 against better teams as long as you take care of business. And the Orioles have been doing that. Props to them. Number 13, we got Chicago Cubs. 3-0 against Oakland, 1-3 against LA. They take that first game against LA, and I thought they were going to cruise. I thought this was a good chance for the Cubs to really make a statement, make a threat to the division lead, but they're kind of right there on the border. I'm going to talk about like the Orioles. They're the first team on the outside looking in my opinion. They do have a lot of threats in this division with the up-and-coming teams, like the Pirates, going to give them a lot of trouble. Got the Cardinals, who always play them tough, and I think, again, these teams can all be so interchangeable. Now, moving on up, number 12, we got the Philadelphia Phillies. 2-1 against the White Sox, 3-1 against Colorado. A lot of people were panicking last week. I had dropped them a little bit, but I wasn't quite sold. I know they have a lot of injuries they're dealing with. A little bit of a World Series hangover that we always talk about with Houston as well. No Rhys Hoskins. No Bryce Harper. It's a lot of concern. The offense wasn't getting it done. The pitching was struggling. But right now, they kind of turned it around. They beat up on 2 teams that are much lower than them. And it's going to be the case. They got a tough division. They're going to have to pick up wins on those teams. And I think they're going to continue to be right there. And it'll be great when their team starts coming back together. 11. Minnesota Twins. 1-2 against Boston. 1-2 against Washington. A little bit of a losing week. But I've liked what I've seen so far from them this season. I kind of think they're a pretty heavy favorite to win the Central, so I'm going to kind of keep them in the lower end of the playoff bracket. Maybe matching up if they were in the AL East, they might be a little bit lower, but I do think it does help in their advantage in terms of power rankings. that their division is what it is, and I expect them to kind of walk away with it now. Number 10, Texas, 3-0 against KC, 2-1 against Oakland. Another team that I kind of got a lot of trouble on for not putting them ahead of Houston, not putting them ahead of some other teams. Sure, they've been super fire leading out of this season. Their offense has been great. Their rotation's been pretty great. Took care of business this week against these two teams. But I still think they have to prove the consistency to me, at least for another week or two. Next time they play up some of their tougher matchups, make sure they're winning those series. Make sure they're winning and showing the consistency of a team that's ready and they're here to be in the top row. Sure, I know they beat Houston that one series because it's one series. Houston's been beating them for years. Houston has the World Series champ hangover a little bit. Come on, you can't just dethrone the champ that's been the champ of this division for 3 years just off one series. So keep it up, Texas. You're right where you need to be in a playoff team, and who knows, keep this up and you'll be a top row contender. Number 9. We got the Dodgers 1-2 against the Mets, 3-1 against the Cubs. I think it's a pretty solid week for the Dodgers after a lot of early season concerns from me and how they were looking. I think they've kind of settled the ship, and if they just maintain what they're doing, they're a playoff team. They're going to be competing with this other team, the San Diego Padres, who went 1-2 against Atlanta and then 3-1 against Arizona. Those two teams are going to be competing all season, so it's going to be a matter of which one of them wins the division and which one of them takes a wild card. It's going to make a difference. It could play out as a long-term effect, but right now those two teams seem to match up pretty closely, and I can't really put my finger on it. I'm giving the edge slightly to the Padres. Number 7, 2-1 against the Angels, 1-2 against the Blue Jays. Blue Jays came into Toronto and took care of them, almost going for the sweep if they not lost that game 2 in extras. A lot of concern for the Yankees, mainly around the injuries. I think they have something like 9 of their starters currently on the IL, including pitching. So whether they can continue to compete in a strong division or these injuries are going to catch up to them, 500, 550 baseball might not be enough, and that's very easy to get when you start playing Toronto a lot, Tampa Bay a lot. The Orioles aren't going to go easy on you. Boston, never going to go easy on the Yankees. So Yankees are going to be in for a tough schedule, let alone their team suffered a lot of injuries. So right now I got them at 7. They're vulnerable. Should they put up another week of losing, followed by another week of losing, we could see them back down here. But still got star power. Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, all those guys still getting it done as a Yankee. So they're going to be picking up solid wins. Number 6, 1-2 against Houston, 2-1 against the Yankees. I've moved the Jays up a little bit. I'm always hesitant to do so, being a Jays fan of myself, and I am usually a little more hard on them. I was very concerned with the pitching early in the season, but it's seeming to settle down. Kikuchi at number 5 has been very solid. So 1 through 5, any of those pitchers can get you a win at any day, and their lineup is among the best in the MLB, right? So having a tough week going 3-3 against 2 of the top teams up here, you got to be somewhat excited still. I think MLB.com had them number 2 or maybe number 3 last week. I did not agree with that. I think the Jays have a long way to go, and maybe I have them too high right now. But it is what it is. They're in the top row. Number 5, I got the Houston Astros, 2-1 against Toronto, 3-0 against Atlanta. So this is exactly why I didn't overreact last week, like all you guys in the comments were talking about. Houston comes in, plays 2 top teams in MLB, goes 5-1. So that's the kind of team has won a World Series. That's the kind of team that's been top at the division for many, many years. And they don't let those weak starts of April World Series hangover affect them. They're still top tier team. You're seeing their rotation being solid. You're seeing their bats being solid, even without Altuve. These guys are always going to be a contender to win the World Series this year. So I think overreacting with how their season started, taking them out of the top row that early, might have been a little bit too much for you guys. But this way, I didn't have to move them really at all. I think I moved them up 1 spot. Number 4, I don't know if this is where they should be, but 3-0 against Seattle, 1-2 against Boston. They continue to win each week. So it's what was that, like 3-3 week? That's still, I think overall division they have a large edge. We could start to see some shakeup though. I haven't seen Milwaukee play too much of the interdivision stuff. Haven't watched much of their games super closely. Just kind of going off box scores, but seems like overall their depth is taking care of business, and I'm pretty excited where they are. Number 3, we got the Mets 2-1 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against San Fran. Winning week. They're playing San Fran right now. They're probably maybe going to go 3-1. You got the solid rotation. Alonso's been crushing. Alonso has been crushing the baseball. The Mets just continue to kind of be competitive, but they got this roadblock in the way. Number 2, 2-1 against the Padres, so that was a big win, inter-conference win. And then they went 0-3 against Houston again. This team has been on fire for most of the season. I'm not going to hold one series against another top team too much against them. Still keeping them ahead because I think overall the Braves in a 7-game series, I know that was a 3-game series, I know all that, but I think when all is said on the table, the Braves are going to take that in that situation. I think they're in more of a chance to win the division. Even though we got 2 of these guys, they're more of a chance to take that division and be the top team. So I do think the Braves are still number 2. That leaves us number 1. I couldn't dethrone them. Can't do it. 2-1 against Cincinnati, and then they sweep the White Sox. They started the week getting beat up. I think it was 10-1 by Cincinnati, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. The fall of the number 1, and then they just go on to clobber them the rest of the week and then sweep the White Sox. So Tampa Bay continues to just roll. Don't know what it is, but Tampa Bay has a special power. They're keeping it rolling, and anyone in the American League East, you got to be concerned. This team is going to be possibly on pace right now to 140 wins. Could you imagine a team getting 140 wins in a season? Blows your mind to think about. But there you guys have it. There's the power rankings for today. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your comments below. Don't forget to smash that like button. Guys, we will see you guys for that next video.